Hello, book lovers. Welcome to the Sunday Summer Series, Bookish Conversations by Beauty and a Book Brand. I'm Nisha, the host for today's conversation, and we will be speaking with author Christine Pride. Christine is a writer, editor, and longtime publisher veteran. She's held editorial posts at various Big Five imprints. As an editor, Christine has published a range of books with a special emphasis on inspirational stories and memoirs, including numerous New York Times bestsellers. As a freelance editorial consultant, she does select editing and proposal/content development, as well as teaching and coaching. Christine splits her time between New York and Los Angeles. Welcome, Christine, and thank you for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
So, can you share the moment that you realized you wanted to become a writer?
Yeah, I actually can because for me it's a lot more recent than most people. It wasn't when I was a kid growing up, I was very into reading, but I never thought of becoming a writer. And it wasn't until I started a career in publishing on the other side of the fence, so to speak. I was a book editor, as you just mentioned in my bio, for 20 years. And so I was around all these writers and working with all these writers, but I still didn't really think about it for myself until I published a book called Charlotte Walsh Likes to Win when I was working at Simon and Schuster by a woman named Jo Piazza. And Jo Piazza ended up becoming my writing partner. And so as an editor, you're always like thinking about ideas that you want to see in the world. I was always churning with them, but usually I'm suggesting them to other people. But in this case of an idea I had about a friendship between a Black woman and a white woman that was affected by a police shooting, I thought, wow, I could write this myself. And wouldn't it be cool and interesting and dynamic to write it with Jo Piazza, who's a white woman, so that it sort of blends both our experiences and perspectives. And so that's really what planted the seed, wanting to do this particular idea. And that was in 2016, 2017. So again, kind of recently. And then I guess I got bit by the bug and have written 2 more books since then. 3, actually.
That's awesome. And I like how, you transitioned, right? Like, so it's just, I feel like it's the same as like my brand and then like being an English teacher. It's a line because, I read books with students every day, but my brand is like literacy based. So it's, a lot of bookish stuff. So I totally understand. It's like,
Yeah, I think it's just cool how, if I could go back and talk to my 20-year-old self, you always feel like things are going to be so linear and you have to plan
yeah.
everything out. And, now that I'm in my 40s, it really is about the element of surprise in your life and how things unfold organically in a way that you almost can't orchestrate. And so working with writers was, like you said, like a stepping stone to, working one-on-one with one writer in this collaboration. And that was a stepping stone for me, to go out on my own and do it. And I probably actually, it would have been too big a leap for me, I think, to go from straight editor to straight writer, right? Like I needed that kind of transition. And that was really valuable for me. And it unfolded, exactly how it should have.
That's awesome. Who were your biggest literary influences growing up, and how have they shaped your work?
Yeah, like I said, I was such a big reader growing up, but I wasn't applying it necessarily to, oh, I want to write like this person, or, oh, I appreciate their writing talent. It was more like I appreciate the magic of someone being able to create this story, right? And so in that way, it was so diffuse. Like it wasn't, just one person. I mean, and I talk about this or I make a reference to it at least in All the Men I've Loved Again. Mildred Pierce, who wrote Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and that was a series. And that I always say was the first book that I read, one where I saw or read about people who look like me, right? And I grew up in the 70s and 80s where that was still, going to your local library. It was still like much harder to find books that were centered around Black characters. And 2, it was the first time that a book affected me emotionally. I mean, I remember really tearing up, and at such a young age. I mean, I was like 7 or 8 when I read this book. And to me, I like that was magical. Like, I didn't know reading something could make you feel things, which as an adult, of course, that. But as a child, it seemed like, whoa, I can't believe it had impact. And that impact has stayed with me. And that's what I try to do in all of my books, have a reader have that kind of emotional response where there's something in the material that touches them in some way that they can carry with them.
That's awesome. I like when I read and there's like an emotion evoked and like all the feelings, like even if it's like a feeling where you're like, oh, I don't want to feel this way, but like it becomes memorable because of that emotional connection.
I always say,
How,
make me cry, make me cry. I don't say in any other part of my life, I'm not going out and asking people to make me cry. But in books, I do like that.
yeah, I see in a lot of like book club like groups and stuff, and people are like, all right, like give me all the titles that's going to like pull all of the emotions. So
I love it.
um how do you handle writer's block, and what advice would you give to aspiring authors who are facing this challenge?
I mean, writer's block is the worst. For me, it doesn't necessarily present as, I don't know, a block I can't write. It more presents as I hate everything I write, if that makes sense. Like the words
Yeah.
come, but it's more like the psychological factor of I'm doing it, but I'm just not doing it well. It doesn't feel right. It's not flowing. That can feel really frustrating. And I imagine as frustrating it is to, stare at the blank page and be paralyzed and not be able to produce any words. But I've learned this far along in doing it that to have faith that it won't always feel that way. And so I just keep going, right? Like I know it's kind of a cycle and that at any point in the process, I'm going to run into this roadblock. And so it's less scary than it was before because I know that somehow there's a way through. And so trusting that. And I think part of being a writer, and I tell the writers I work with this, part of being a writer is learning to trust that and learning to, push through even when it seems impossible to do that. And so I try to practice what I preach.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot, like a lot. So I interviewed Nick Stone. She came to our Jamaica retreat and she spoke about that as well, like just pushing through. And then a couple of weeks ago, we interviewed an author, Liz Bullard, and she said the same thing. Like you just have to keep going. You have to write, like even if it's not something that you may use in that piece, just like getting your thoughts out, like fleshing everything out. So I like that that's a common practice because sometimes we think a book or a story is going one way and it may, ends up in another destination, which is awesome.
And I always say too that no writing is wasted. I used to earlier on get very frustrated if I wrote a scene, a chapter, or whatever that then, didn't work. And I would say, like, I lost an hour or a week or, however long that took. And it took a while to realize that oftentimes I repurposed that idea somewhere else in the book or even another book, right? Like life is long. But I'd also I feel like no matter what you're writing, it helps unlock something else. So it's never a waste. And so just, as long as the words are coming, and I'm happy that a lot of people say that and feel that way, because I think the more you hear it and the more you understand you're not the only one, the easier it is to do the, pushing through.
Yeah. How do you approach character development and what do you consider essential in creating compelling characters?
For me, it's really seeing them as real people. And I mean, like truly, almost physically imagining them in my space. What would they do in this context? What would be be chatting about, on the train, or if I'm sitting in traffic on the 405, which isn't often a common occurrence. And so that thinking about them in all these different environments helps them come alive to me. And I have this exercise that I give to a lot of my writers when I'm coaching or teaching workshops, which is to make a list of the character traits of your characters, like actually write them down. Because sometimes they're so clear in our heads, but if you tell me a character is really funny or stubborn or, a bully, and they're that way in your mind, but you're not seeing the actual actions of seeing that character make somebody else, laugh out loud or cry or whatever, refusing to do something to bring that alive. And so that's a good checks and balances system to really say, oh, have I shown that? And so I try to do that too, at this point, kind of intuitively, but I really try to make sure that all the dimensions that I conceive of my character are shown on the page. And then, really going back and checking that, right? Not just assuming it's there, but really saying in this scene, does this character come across as charming as, I think he is in, in my head or my memory, as it were.
I like that you say like you go back to like make sure, because it has to be like not difficult, but a process of like having multiple characters and not like mixing their personalities,
Exactly.
into each other.
Or not
So
making them so flat and generic so they all seem like all the characters seem similar and they all seem kind of
yeah.
like every human, right? Like they lack a specific particularity and that's those particularities and those idiosyncrasies are what make characters memorable and also make you invest in them. And if they don't have that, it's much harder to invest in a cardboard cutout of a person, obviously, than a real deeply flawed, interesting person.
Yeah. How do you stay inspired and keep your writing like fresh and engaging?
Yeah. This might be a counterintuitive answer, but I watch a lot of TV. And I actually do think that absorbing storytelling in another medium where there's other tools at play, other visual tools and dialogue, and things like that help. I don't know. I find it very inspiring. I just love TV for the sake of loving TV. But I do think it's enjoying it, but also thinking, how did they do that? How do they say that? How did they develop that character? How did they keep the tension up for this hour episode? And that even though TV is kind of my break time, right? It's like, okay, I'm done working, or I consider it my leisure time in something that I enjoy doing, but it still helps me in all these ways come back to the work and apply even subconsciously some of the lessons that I'm absorbing.
I agree. Like I always tell people like when they ask me like, "Oh, why do you watch reality TV?" And I'm like, "Well, when they go on their group trips, I'm always like looking for new
Yeah.
destinations to travel to." So I'm like, "Oh, I remember this location or whatever." So I like that you say like it inspires us, right? It's a form of art. And I definitely could see like how, like it lends itself for inspiration.
And also, what is more dramatic than 5 women going on a tropical trip? Talk about, high stakes drama, especially when they run in and it's like, who's getting what room in that first 5 minutes? That's
Yes.
intense TV.
Yeah. I get a lot of, like girls' trips ideas and stuff. Like even like the little bags and like,
Yeah.
who's gonna plan and organizing that. So yes, like TV is definitely inspirational, and the series, especially now that are dropping. Um I feel like I guess that's why a lot of books are getting turned into series, because like it does follow like chapters, like okay, like we're waiting for the next episode.
And I
And
think
you're
readers find it very cool that they love a book and they can see it in a different format or come to life in a different
yes.
way, and that is for better or worse. I mean, obviously, there's always the debate of the movie was better, the book was better. I generally always think the book was better, but it is still like cool to see the characters come alive. I mean, literally in the form of acting, and that's fun to see how different it was from your imagination.
Yep, I agree. Sorry. In your opinion, what is the most rewarding aspect of being an author?
Definitely the readers. That's what always kept me motivated. And that I feel like in our, splintered, divisive, polarized, fill in all the adjectives world, um, books are something that still can bring people together. I mean, even if it's like a friendly debate of I didn't love this book, and my friend loved this book, but it's still, you're talking about the book, you're having community around the book, right? And the way that reader communities, both online and virtually, I mean, like yours, and physical communities and book clubs, it's just really broad. Books can bring a lot of different people together. And then, of course, there's some talking about the book, but it's not always all about the book, and so it's just a really good way to build community. And there's not that many common things that we all have anymore in our splintered society that can bring people together in the same way. So that's being able to offer that as a tool is really gratifying for me.
That's awesome. How has the publishing landscape changed since you started, and how have you adapted to the changes?
Yeah. So I started my first publishing job in 2003. So that feels like a lifetime ago in so many levels, even technology wise. I mean, we were still getting manuscripts in the mail, like no one emailed them, and you're making physical copies. And it feels like the golden days at this point now. I'm really dating myself. So there's been a lot of technological revolutions in the meantime. But the industry has also changed, as particularly in the last 5 years, or since 2020, in terms of real efforts to broaden reader bases and broaden audiences, and both externally, meaning reaching out to people, but understanding from an internal perspective, meaning the people that work in the publishing industry, that we also can't be a homogeneous group of, and I don't even just mean racially, which, publishing has always been a very white industry, but I mean geographically, right? Everybody's in New York, or even education, everybody went to the same 8 colleges, and, all those
Yes.
sorts of things. And so realizing that was problematic morally, practically, financially, um, has really been something where, a lot of intention has been put into fixing that. Of course, we have a long way to go. We will always have a long way to go. But seeing that progress and seeing the ability of people to make progress, and the ability of a community and industry to make progress, I think is a good lesson that these things can be done, right? And whether we do them or not is one thing, but it is possible to make these kind of social and emotional changes in mindset. So that's been nice to see.
Yeah, I agree. Like, even in the field of education, like so I lived in California for 6.5 years. I'm originally from New York. So like being in the Department of Education in New York City, and then moving to California, I moved to Bakersfield,
Mhm.
which is, in the center of California, and seeing like just the changes that happen like after 2020, because I moved there in 2015, and like then coming back to New York and seeing, like, so I think that a lot of industries like were attempting to be like intentional about different changes that needed to happen, and a lot of them were positive, so.
Except now, I mean, speaking to you as an educator, then there are these backlashes where, I am really personally worried so much about libraries and kids' libraries. And
Yes.
for all the strides, this pendulum really swung dramatically in the other direction. And for kids, who are like me, an avid reader, and then you go to your local library or your school library, even hoping to find stories that relate to your sexual identity, or your culture, or your immigration status, or whatever, and those books don't exist. It really is going to shape a generation of kids. And that is staggering, that there might not be a reader in 20 years like me who could say, I look back and found this book in my local library at 7, or 10, and it changed my life. And that is really problematic, and makes me very demoralized and terrified, but also inspired by all the librarians and educators who are really fighting so hard against that.
Yeah, we do. It's called a book club unit. I teach ninth grade and 12th grade. And a part of the intention for that is for my students to find a book that they connect with, a book that I'm not making them read, a book that is not a part of the curriculum. So I take them to the school library. I ask the librarian to pull, a few
Option.
books or whatever, just for them to browse. I have them like explore what genres they might, want to read. And I find that in that unit, out of all of the units that we do for the school year, the students are the most engaged. And that
Oh,
is because they are tapping into something that they connect with on, whatever level, however they decided that they wanted to select that book,
yeah.
they feel that ownership and they're like, I chose this book. I'm going to read this book. I'm going to do my discussion questions about this book that I have selected. And I try to encourage other educators to do something similar, even at elementary level. Because from New York to California and back, I've seen the same thing. Like once you present that to students, they do develop a love for literacy, and I think that that is important. Because, like you said, like it is diminishing. Like there is, especially after COVID, I found that a lot of students did when they came back to school, they were like, I don't want to
Just
read or whatever. Yes, and I was just like, no, you need to. It's important.
I love
Um,
that idea too, because I feel like kids don't have control over much of their lives, right? And so some of it is like, I just don't want to be told what to do, what to read, where to go, when to wake up, to do my homework,
yeah.
etc. So even that small measure of you can choose this, makes reading, empowers them, and then makes reading more fun, even if ironically they pick the same book that was assigned,
Yeah.
right? There's something
Yeah.
about choosing, and being empowered to make the choice that changes the reading experience. And so I think it's very cool that you do that.
Thank you. What role do you think social media plays in an author's career today?
Oh God, this is this is the last question, because this is the hardest question. You've been building to this. Now I feel like I'm on the hot seat, because I have such a love-hate relationship with social media. Um,
Same.
it's so hard, and it's, something we all struggle with so much, whatever your career is, but it's sort of like, how much am I on it? Even personally consuming content, and how much am I putting content out there? And it's really a tricky balance. I think for me, what I've gotten to is I was not on social media at all before I became an author. So when Joe and I sold the first book, I decided I'll pick one thing. So I joined Instagram in 2018, and like totally newbie, and was kind of going to it kicking and screaming. The and old, like I'm not a digital native, so it's like, how do I do this? Was embarrassing but true. But once the book was published, I also couldn't imagine not being on social media to be a part of the experience that happens on social media, right? So people tagging the book and posting about the book and, sending DMs and things like that. It would have been like a tree falling in the forest, I just would have missed
Mhm.
out on all that. And that was really gratifying. It was really fun to participate in. Speaking of, I was earlier about being a part of a community, that felt great. But my line in the sand is I never want to feel like, personally, this is different from everybody and this is no judgment. I never want to feel like I'm chasing likes. I'm posting content. I'm checking my numbers. I'm, trying to get followers. I never want to feel like I'm putting effort into that. And so when I post or when I have something to talk about, I'm more thinking of my Instagram as kind of a scrapbook for myself. So this would be content or pictures or video or what have you that I'd want to look back on in a year, 5 years as like, oh, throwback Thursday. That was like fun to relive. Not because I'm trying to get a reaction or a book sale or something from other people or validation, because I think that's a hard line to toe. Like, I don't want to feel like my worth is tied to my Instagram, and I don't care what anybody says, that's a slippery slope. Like, it is very easy to fall into that trap, or to compare yourself to other people on social media who are always going on better trips and selling more books and having shinier skin and etc. So that's something I have to really be intentional about fighting against, as I think we all do. I don't think I'm unique there, but it does take real effort to do that.
I agree. I always tell people, like, especially like our subscribers, because they're like, "Oh, you didn't post in a week or whatever," and I'm like, "It's okay." Like
I have other
we
stuff to do
nothing,
maybe this week. Yeah.
nothing is going on right now, so we don't have anything to post, and that's okay. I'm like, if you ever want to like email and say hello, you definitely can. But I did have to create that balance, because I did find myself, like, just because we have a virtual book club, it grew from a couple of hundred people to a couple of thousand people. So then I had people personally sending me messages, like, on my Facebook page and Instagram. And I was like, whoa, 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 this is like getting out of hand. So I think that it is very important to also have like moments where it's like social media free time. And also for my employees, I tell them, hey, we're going to take a social media break. It's usually in the summertime, and we take 4 weeks, 5 weeks, where like no one's logging into the accounts. We're just like with our families and relaxing.
That's amazing. I love that, because somehow the idea of making it kind of mandatory and that everybody does it lets everybody off the hook. You know what I mean? Like, one
Yes.
person doesn't have to feel like I'm alone out here taking my break and everybody else is, typing away. And so
Yeah.
I really love that. And I think it's such a good idea. And I'm always so, supportive and happy when people do take these social media hiatuses and you get the message. I think it's really a good practice to instill, and maybe I'll take one too.
I tell my students too, like, put the phone down. Like, let's
Yeah.
have a period where you're not checking your phone. Like, let's
My
have a
thing is, I get
conversation.
very nervous when I find myself mindlessly scrolling, right? Like, I can sense, I'm just in, like, even if I'm going to look up one thing on purpose, like a bookstagrammer that I need to contact, or right, there's like might be a legitimate business or personal need to be on Instagram, and then suddenly it's like,
Yep.
and then you look up and 15 minutes have passed and I have watched the most inane videos, and I just, it's shocking to me that whatever is in my brain in the algorithm feels like something that happens outside of myself, and that makes me really uncomfortable. And it reminds me that these people, in the social media industrial complex, really know what they're doing from a psychological standpoint, and that I find
Yes.
kind of terrifying, because I
Yep.
feel like a self-disciplined person with a lot of control, and then I'm like, "Ugh, ugh."
Yep. Ordering the
Oh my god.
smoothie machines and everything. I'm like, okay, I need to stop shopping. Um, Let's see. How do you feel about book reviews, and do they influence like your future writing projects?
These questions really are getting progressively harder. Oh God, book reviews. Let me go on a soapbox. I think book reviews are important in terms of the ecosystem, and I do think it's nice to have people comment for better or worse on their reactions to a book. Like I welcome that. That's how we engage with art, right? Like you have your personal subjective reaction to it. What I'm finding a little bit problematic in our modern day ecosystem is that, and it's the case across industries, it's just like a social mentality now that everybody's hot take is loud, important, and aggressive, and supposedly objective, like it's some sort of expertise. And I just don't think that you can apply that obviously to art, which is inherently subjective. And so the reviews, and particularly like bookstagram reviewers or social media reviewers that offer these, is particularly when they're takedowns, or they're saying, I read the meanest things that people write about books online on Goodreads. And, I'm so sensitive to it. One, as a writer, but two, as, an editor who can see behind the curtain of how much time and effort somebody has put into a story, how vulnerable it is. And then to have somebody say 1 star, did not finish, why
Yeah.
does this book even exist, is so demoralizing and so degrading, and namely so unnecessary, right? Like that. It's like the old adage, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. There is
Exactly.
no need, to my mind, this is a subjective opinion, there is no need, to my mind, of somebody going online and giving a book a bad review, or 1 star or whatever. There's no benefit to anybody. Sure, gush about a book, say how much you loved it. If you have a specific, this book should have had a trigger warning about this, or this, some constructive feedback. I
Yeah.
didn't like, this character didn't feel like it was portraying the indigenous community fairly. Sure. But just like, 2 thumbs down
Yeah.
is is really disheartening. And I'm on a soapbox about it because I just see it more and more with everybody wanting to get into the kind of bookstagram space.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like the way we make noise now in our society is by saying negative things, to break through and having these harsh hot takes. And I just feel like it's so damaging. So I really try to approach it with a grain of salt. My friends came together, and my partner, and banned me from Goodreads. So I am no longer allowed to look at Goodreads at all, which is great for my mental health, because
Yes.
you can't pander to everyone, and you can't make everybody happy. And you can't, I want people to love everything I do. Everybody's not going to love everything I do. And I can't, let myself get hung up on that, or it would be paralyzing. I would never write another word. And so I really try to, it's like with social media, I just really try to have a healthy balance and perspective.
I agree with that. Like even like as an entrepreneur, we when we first started, we sent our boxes out to like YouTubers and influencers, and most of the boxes were sent like for promotional purposes. But yes, when you see someone like just going off like about a product, and it's like, oh, this lipstick color is terrible, whatever, and it's like it just may not be your shade, and that's okay.
Don't wear it.
Like that's all you have to say. So I totally understand. And I always just try to live by like, don't read the comments,
Yeah.
like, so I've gotten a lot better at that since we started almost 10 years ago. But it was hard initially because I was like, I wanted to know what the feedback was. And the feedback was mixed in with
Yes, and
the
that's what's
other
hard
stuff.
too. Yeah, you have to
Yes.
take everything in together, and it's such an onslaught too. People there's a lot of commentary. And so it is hard to, sift through what is legitimate, helpful. I mean, I'm always open to critiques and criticism. It's not that. It's just so much of it is a basis on, and you made me think of something even, for the lipstick or the boxes or books or what have you. I think people have this mentality these days that everything is for them personally. So it's like a personal, like this box was supposed to be for me and everything in here is supposed to be, work for me. And why? And if it doesn't, it's your fault for not, this book was supposed to speak to me. This book was supposed to change my life. And if it doesn't, it's on you, and that is a pervasive, and I think really pernicious mentality that people have. And I would love if those of us in the public sphere in whatever way really pushed, at least acknowledged it, and if not the way that we push back against it.
I agree. Let me see.
Well, I think your boxes are great. 5 stars.
Thank you. What upcoming projects are you excited about, and can you give us a sneak peek, like a summary of?
Yes. Well, Joe, my writing partner, and I, we just turned in our 3rd book together. That's called I Never Knew You at All. And so we turned it into our editor last Friday. So it'll come out next summer. So I'm very excited about that. My 3rd book together in the books, as they say. I'm also working on a new solo project, which is very new and I can't say anything about, but I am very excited about. So that's the teaser. And sort of tangentially related to books, I this week launched a writer's retreat. So I, after doing a lot of writing and or teaching and coaching and leading workshops for other people, I decided to launch my own annual retreat called Write with Pride. You see what I did there? And, it's really gratifying to me to bring together a group of writers, right, who can support each other. As I said, community is so big for me. So, bringing serious writers together, but also giving them my expertise both in craft as a novelist, but also as a publishing person. And, uniquely, I wear both of those hats and I have so much experience right in the publishing industry. And I really like to demystify it for aspiring writers who can find it, really opaque and intimidating and confusing. And how does this all work? And so I'm really excited to launch that, and that'll kick off in September. So lots of projects in the air. And then of course, All the Men I've Loved again coming out in July, and then I'll be going on tour for that. So, that'll take up most of July. But this is my first debut book launch, at 48 too. So it's like a new career, doing it on my own. There's a lot happening, which is exciting, but also nerve-wracking.
Congratulations. It's awesome. It's all, like you said, like great things, like things to look forward to that are exciting. That's really good. If you could collaborate with any other author, so I know that you do collaborate with Joe, but if you could collaborate with any other author, who would it be and why?
And it could be living or dead, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. I love questions like this, except then then there's 5 people to narrow it down. Then I'm like, I don't want to give the cliche answer, but I'm going to give what may be to some people the cliche answer and say Toni Morrison. Obviously she's an icon and a legend. And I don't even think I would be collaborating with her. That feels presumptuous on my part, as much as worshiping, the ground that she walked on and learning as much as I can. Like, I think, based on I've never met the woman, and now sadly I would never have the chance, but, just based on her body of work, she has such a fascinating mind. And, that she was a book editor for a time. I think we share that, being on both sides of the fence. And so I'd want to talk to her about that. So maybe this is even more of a wine date than a collaboration. But in either case, I just would love to have one-on-one access, to kind of peering into understanding how it works. Because I think she was truly a genius.
I agree. I went to Black Writers Weekend in 2018, and we
Mm,
watched it. We watched her documentary, and just
so
her
good. Yeah.
story was just, yeah. So I remember that, yeah, she started as an editor.
Your story would be so incredible today, but it's
Yeah,
just like when you put it in the context of time, thinking as a Black writer today and then starting out as a Black writer, 50 years ago. I mean, it's just mind.
yeah, yeah. How do you measure success as an author, and has that definition changed over time?
It has, this is the benefit of being an editor before I became a writer is that I had a wealth of, sort of advice for writers that then I try to give to myself, right? Which is always
Yeah.
easier said than done because no one listens to their own advice or the advice they give to other people. But I would always tell writers that you really need to have modest expectations and celebrate every milestone. It just can't be that you're going straight from your laptop first draft to the New York Times bestseller list and that's it and that's the end all be all. Would I love to be a New York Times bestseller? Obviously. Would I love for Oprah to call me right now? Obviously. But we can't. Let me check my phone. Nope, no messages. But we can't get so hung up on those longer term or big or ambitious goals. Not that people shouldn't have them, but it's just I think that can distract us from the day-to-day kind of victories. And I think I celebrate all the time, or I feel proud when I meet any kind of like coming up with a book idea, finishing a first draft, turning in a book, helping another writer, right? Seeing one of my clients get a book deal. Like those are all measures of success. And I keep them modest so that they can happen a lot. And so that then they can build up on each other and I can feel successful on a day-to-day basis. So I like to set myself up for success. And some days success is you opened your laptop and you got 500 words out, right? Like I still consider that a success. I'm not maybe popping champagne about it, but I want to set myself up to feel good because that's the only way you can keep going. If you're only having these elusive long-term goals that you may never reach, for me personally, I couldn't stay in the fight.
Yeah, I agree. Like even like when I'm creating like or when I create lists of like things to do, I always like put them in steps. And so my friends are always like, "Well, why don't you just like write what the goal is, the end goal?" And I'm like, "No, the end goal is the big thing that's going to take a few weeks, a few months, a few years to accomplish. Like I need to do these things first
Yes.
in order to get to that." And so me checking these things off as I complete them makes me feel accomplished. And yes, like it is motivating. Like,
There's
okay, I got
nothing more
this thing.
satisfying than that scratch off. Like sometimes even if something's not on my to-do list and then I do it, I add it to my to-do list
Yes,
just
yes.
so
I
that
do the same
just
thing.
so that I can, oh, am I just me? No.
Yep, I do the same thing.
It's too satisfying not to. I have to get credit for it somehow.
Yep, I agree. What legacy do you hope to leave through your writing?
Oh my gosh. I mean, legacy is such a lofty idea. I'm
Mm,
so focused on the present that, I just want people come July to, pick up All the Men I
yes.
Loved Again and be happy reading it. And, maybe in a small way, part of a legacy of like, I read some great books over summer 2025 when they're looking back on, their reading in years to come. I think for me, like, if there is a bigger legacy, it's that like I've really tried to be a good publishing citizen, right? Like I really tried to nurture and support writers, have lots of different books come in the world, just really keep books as a vibrant force in our culture, working in publishing all these years, and to the degree that my own personal books are a part of that. But I do think that's a we all play a small part of building community and right and building civilization even. And so, I want my legacy to be that she was supportive and that, she was good to people and that matters. I do think, and that she wrote books that were, heartfelt, right? Like that's what I try to do. I write about friendship and family, and in this case, romantic love, but all of the, sort of ties that bind us. And I think that's really important to explore. So I hope it, touches people in that way. And when people are touched, who knows what the ripple effect of that is.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Alice Walker said the most common way people give up their powers by thinking they don't have any. Is there any author quote that inspires you in life or literacy?
I love that Alice Walker quote. I couldn't say it verbatim, so I wrote it down. But this is actually a quote that has lived on my website since I created a website in 2010, I think. And it's an Edith Wharton quote. I love Edith Wharton, classic. And it says, "I don't believe there's any greater blessing than that of being pierced through and through by the splendor and sweetness of words. I wouldn't take a kingdom for it." And I think, I just think it sounds beautiful, but it captures the essence of how important I think words and storytelling are. And I love to play that game. Would you rather? Would you rather this or this? Or would you give up this or that? Cheese or pizza? And in a weird way, this quote gets to the heart of that. Like there's so few things that I would trade or sacrifice for books. Like if you, told me I had to give up books or reading, that would dramatically change my life, obviously. And so I think that quote captures the essence of it. And since I love Edith Wharton so much, it's a double whammy of being meaningful.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have our last question. So if you could create a cosmetic product inspired by one of your books, what would it be and how would it reflect the themes or characters in the story?
Yes. So one thing about me personally is I'm a perfume addict. I collect perfumes. I'm obsessed with perfumes. And so I'm counting perfumes, right? That counts as a cosmetic. And,
Yep.
that qualifies. And so I'm always trying to find new scents. And I think it speaks to this idea that scent is so strong and there's such a connection between, especially if like I'm wearing a certain scent and then I'll remember exactly where it was, like the summer I wore that scent all the time. And it'll take me back there. And so I would create, and I wish I could actually do this for real, and I might try in the future, but create kind of a scent for each book, right? Like a scent that represents kind of the essence of the book, because then smelling that or having that, right, would be evocative of both, the time I wrote the book, like publishing the book, and, what it represents about the book. And it would be so distinctive. So now my new thing is like I want to do a scent for every book. I think that would be cool. Maybe I can get a publisher in the future to like, they do the deckled edges now, or the
yes. Listen,
I want to do like a
like
scented
for ladies'
book.
nights. Like you can create a scent and like align it to like your book and like share how it's connected. Maybe like one of your characters.
I totally want to do that. Well, in this book, it's funny that you say that, because in this book, I reference Cool Water cologne. I don't even know if anybody wears Cool Water anymore, but in 2000, let me tell you, it was a very popular. Every guy between a certain age Cool Water, including the guy I was dating at the time, my college boyfriend. And it has such a strong association for me. Like if I'm walking in the mall or, a Sephora or something, it just, it's fits me. And so it is like sometimes you associate a sense, specifically with a person. And I think that's
Yes.
really cool too. So I do reference, I don't know if, Cool Water wants to use me as an influencer, call me Cool Water. But that fragrance is being checked in the book.
Yes, I think that's awesome. And I like that, like it's written in the book. So like now, like I'm gonna go and find it so I can smell
Yes.
it. You know, like so I like that you chose that cosmetic product because um fragrance is very unique to even
Mhm.
like on different like people. It
The
may,
pheromones, yes.
yes.
Yeah,
So
fascinating.
all right, Christine. Well, thank you for joining us. Can you let the viewers know how they can reach you, how they can order your book that is releasing in July, and also all future books? All the Men I've Loved Again by Christine Pride. Make sure you guys check it out. How
Yeah,
can they
it's
reach
available.
you?
Yeah, it's available wherever books are sold as of July. You can pre-order now at Amazon or any other retailer. That would make me very happy. I'd appreciate that very much. And then in terms of keeping up with me, I only have one social media platform, as I mentioned, and that is Instagram, and it's just at C Pride. Very easy. But obviously, I'd love for people to connect with me there and reach out. And I'm very serious about this community aspect. And so I'm really happy to hear from people, and I'm happy to feel a part of your community now. And I hope you'll have me back because this was really fun.
Yes. Thank you so much, Christine. And I look forward to, yes, connecting with you in the future. I'm going to start All the Men I've Loved Again on Sunday. So I will definitely like reach out and we could connect and talk. All right. Have a great rest of your week.
You too. Have a great night.
Thank you, you too. Mhm. All right, guys. So that was author Christine Pride. Now it's time to share some bookish related fun facts. So in the comments, share a book related fun facts. It could be a quote or something that you learned about a specific book or a specific author. I'm going to give 5 minutes for you guys to write that in the quotes. Thank you guys so much for writing those bookish fun facts in the quote. We had a lovely conversation with author Christine Pride. I wanted to share some information about our bookstore tour. So on Sunday, September 21st, we will celebrate local bookstores at the Beauty and a Bookstore Tour 2025. The kickoff event will be held in Brooklyn, New York. Readers will be transported to various independent bookstores around the city. Food and beverages are included at the kickoff event. Libro FM has sponsored an audiobook for all registered attendees. We will have self-care sessions, author signings, and more. So please come out, sip, eat, practice self-care, and shop. Make sure that you register today. All right. Be sure to select a genre team. Special thanks to our sponsors, Libros FM and DIY Van and Handyman Services, LLC. All information is available at www.beautyandabookbox.com. Thank you for joining the Sunday Summer Series, Bookish Conversations. Have a great week.